And as COP29 comes to a close, Africa's transition plans have taken center stage. Several leaders have emphasized that climate and development finance for African countries should be provided as grants rather than loans to accelerate the transition. Meanwhile, RMB has highlighted the potential of carbon credits to generate revenue and support Africa's transition, particularly in relation to clean cooking, which has emerged as a concern. And joining me now with further insight is RMB's head of carbon markets, Toby Campbell-Colquhoun. Thank you so much for your time, Toby. Now talk to us about the issue of traditional cooking methods and what exactly we mean by that.
So in terms of traditional cooking methods, this normally involves the cooking of using wood or charcoal on a traditional burner. Now, these will often emit smoke or harmful indoor pollutants, which can lead to severe health effects over a period of years.
All right. I mean, just on that, how far-reaching then are the environmental and economic implications?
So if we look at this, as a large sort of continental topic, so we know back in April, the International Energy Agency released a report called "The Vision for Clean Cooking Access for All." In that, they highlighted some key statistics. They highlighted that there were around 1 billion people still relying on traditional methods of cooking across the continent, and there are assessments that as a consequence of the harmful indoor air pollutants, that around 500,000 premature deaths occur each year, as well as deforestation, etc.
Well, what does clean cooking then look like?
So this is the good news, is that there are indeed solutions out there.
Yes.
So there are a range of technologies for clean cooking. So if we're looking in urban areas where it's possible to put in place the infrastructure, we can look at LPG or liquefied petroleum gas. We can look at electricity. We can look at bioethanol as alternative fuels for cook stoves in urban areas. In rural areas, it's harder to put in place this infrastructure. So we look at improved cooking, which is still using wood or charcoal, but using burners which are more efficient and give off fewer pollutants.
Well, is the gap between the traditional cooking methods and the clean cooking, is that kind of an indication of costs? And I mean, are people aware of this?
So correct. And so if we look at the different types of solutions that exist for clean cooking, a number of those types of cook stoves are quite expensive. So a lot of households, particularly in rural areas, cannot afford to go and replace their current cooking methods with the alternative cooking methods. And this is where carbon finance and carbon credits come in, because not only are clean cook stoves displacing harmful indoor air pollutants, they're also reducing carbon dioxide. So they're reducing those emissions, both as a consequence of cleaner burning fuel, but also in terms of avoided deforestation, etc., that goes with creating the charcoal and the wood on the burners. And so those carbon credits. This is when you can demonstrate that as a consequence of putting in place new actions, your baseline of emissions has been reduced to a new level, and you can monitor and report and verify those emission reductions. And there are standards out there that you can report this data to, who will then enable the issuance of a carbon credit, each one's worth 1 ton of CO2, onto a digital registry. Those carbon credits can then be sold, and the revenue from that can be used to subsidize the cook stoves. But this is where a company such as RMB comes in, because the subsidized cook stoves, to make them more cheap, happens up front when the cook stoves are sold. But the revenue from the carbon credits may not occur for a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, or there's monitoring, reporting, issuance, and the actual implementation of that project. And so what we can do is to help provide the finance up front through equity or debt solutions, or during the lifetime of existing projects, in return for an assumption that that the funding will then come through from the sale of the carbon credits in the future. And this is one form of sustainable finance or transition finance that we're looking at as a company.
Well, just an example, because I know that RMB also did a deal this year to that effect.
That's right. So we're very proud to support a company called Cocoa Networks, which is a climate technology company based in Kenya. They provide bioethanol cook stoves, and this is and they supply this to more than 1 million households across Kenya and are looking to grow. And so through our actions of being able to support with financing structures, that enables them to scale, to grow, and to continue to implement these solutions benefiting households across the area.
Yeah, and I know obviously with a lot of these things, when you're trying to create that kind of a market and investment, you need a fertile policy environment. Is the policy environment actually accommodative of, you know, this kind of carbon credit market as we transition to clean cooking methods?
You're right. So ultimately, we talk about carbon credits, but the underpinning for those carbon credits needs to, or the value associated that with needs to find people who will buy those carbon credits. And therefore, you have governance on two sides. You need to have governance around the creation of that carbon credit. So can we be sure that, you know, that the data associated with it is accurate, and so therefore it meets certain standards, meets certain requirements before it can be sold. And then we need the governance on the buy side to ensure that companies who've taken on voluntary targets or other entities that have compliance mandatory targets have a clear guidance on what they can or cannot buy to meet those targets. And at a governmental level, and this is very topical with COP29 this week, one of the hot topics was this concept of Article 6. And this is a mechanism which enables the trading between governments and also the trading between private entities of carbon credits that are created under a UN framework. And so there's great hope that with the developments in Article 6, that clarity will be given in the long run to people on the buy and the sell side, enabling the growth of this market.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Toby. Really, we will be keeping a close eye on those developments. That was RMB's Toby Campbell-Colquhoun.